Hello, my name is Joshua Mugabe. I welcome you to Malaria. The malarial parasite, which is the Plasmodium, is another protozoan which lives in the bloodstream of humans. But unlike trypanosomes, the parasites enter into the red blood cells and feeds on their cytoplasm. So here we are looking at the malarial parasite, and we are saying that the Plasmodium parasite, which is another protozoan, for it lives in the bloodstream of humans. But unlike the trypanosomes, the Plasmodium parasite, for it enters into the blood cells. And when it enters into the blood cells, of course, it ends up feeding on the cytoplasm of the red blood cells, and it destroys them. The Plasmodium divides repeatedly inside the red blood cell and eventually bursts, liberating dozens of new parasites into circulation. So I want us first of all to look at this diagram here. We start with our mosquito here, and this mosquito goes and bites a healthy person. When it bites the healthy person, of course, it injects the parasite into the person. And those parasites, when they enter into the person, they will go to the liver cells. And in the liver cells, they are going to reproduce. And when they reproduce, they will now escape from the liver and enter into the red blood cells. When they enter into the red blood cells, they are going to divide repeatedly. They divide repeatedly and increase in number inside the red blood cells. Remember, they are feeding on the content of the red blood cell cytoplasm. But when they multiply and divide and repeatedly increase in number, then the cell ends up bursting. It bursts open and release dozens of new parasites into the circulation. And these new parasites now can go and infect other normal cells, or they'll escape and enter new red blood cell. And this one is going to cause an increase in the temperature of the person, which we refer to as the fever. Now, when the mosquito now comes and bites the person who is infected, it is going now to take the parasites again to the person who is healthy, and the cycle repeats itself. Each of these can invade another cell and undergoes the same cycle. So when we are saying when the cell bursts and it opens and it releases new parasites, now those new parasites can infect healthy cells, and then the cycle will repeat itself. When thousands of red blood cells burst simultaneously, releasing parasites, and their accumulated waste products, the host is going to suffer from a fever. So you have your parasites which have multiplied in the red blood cells, and then the red blood cell is going to burst open. When it bursts open, it is going to cause the individual to suffer from a fever, high temperatures. This cycle of feeding, division, and release is repeated regularly. So the fever occurs every 48 or 72 hours, according to which of the 4 species of Plasmodium has become established. So because of this cycle repeating itself over and over and over again, it is going to cause the person to have fever every 48 or 78 hours. The fever will be occurring. When does the fever become prominent? When the red blood cell bursts open and it releases new parasites. That is when the fever increases. So after 48 to 72 hours, the cycle of feeding, division, and release is going to occur. And when that cycle occurs, it is going to cause the individual to have a fever, a repeated fever of every 48 or 72 hours. The parasites are transmitted from person to person by a female mosquito of the genus Anopheles, which pierces the skin with the sharp tubular mouth parts and feeds on the blood, and they suck from the superficial skin capillaries. So when our mosquito comes and goes and feeds on a healthy individual, it is going to use its sharp tubular mouth parts and pierce into the superficial skin capillary of the human person, and then it will suck blood from that individual. But we are seeing that it is the female mosquitoes that do that damage, and those mosquitoes of the genus of Anopheles. If the blood so taken contains malarial parasites, these undergo complicated series of change in the mosquito, including extensive reproduction, and eventually accumulate in the large number in the salivary gland. So when this mosquito takes in, the malarial parasite, which are coming from an infected person, like for example here, if you look around here, you can see that here we have our red blood cells being infected by the merozoites, and when the merozoites infect the red blood cell, they will develop, and when they develop, they will now change to trophozoites. Now, when this mosquito comes and they bites this infected person, it is going to take in these trophozoites, which are going to be inside now the mosquito. Now they are inside the mosquito body as gametocytes. Now those gametocytes are going to undergo complicated series of changes within the mosquito, including extensive reproduction and then also increasing in number, and they will go and concentrate in the salivary glands of the mosquito. Now after there, they will produce the sporozoids. Now the sporozoids are the ones now that are going to be passed over to a person, and then when they are passed over to a person who is healthy, they will be passed over to that person through the saliva of the mosquito, and then they will go and infect the liver, where the life cycle now is going to take place in the human being. If this mosquito bites a healthy person, saliva containing hundreds of parasites is injected into his or her bloodstream. So we have got our healthy person here, and we have got our mosquito here. This mosquito is here. So when the mosquito bites the healthy person, it is going to inject these parasites into his bloodstream. When the parasites reach the liver, they enter the liver cells and reproduce there. So what is going to happen is that now this parasite, after entering into the person, they will go and infect the liver. That's where they go first. And when they go there, they will reproduce and increase in number. And when they increase in number, later on now they will escape from the liver cells and they will enter into the red blood cells. The infected liver cells will break down and they will release the parasite once again into the bloodstream, where they enter the red blood cells and begin the cycle of reproduction, releasing, and then reinfection. So we are saying when these cells come from the liver, when they move from the liver here, they will take some time to develop and reproduce and increase in number in the liver. Now, the liver cell will burst open, and when it bursts open, the liver cells will release these parasites into the bloodstream and they will enter into the red blood cell, where they will begin again another cycle of reproduction. Then the person will now experience the symptoms. You will experience the symptoms of malaria. So they came from the liver cell, which burst open and released them into the bloodstream. When they come into the bloodstream, now they enter into the red blood cell. In the red blood cell, they continue to reproduce and increase in number. When they increase in number, then the cell is going, the red blood cell will burst open. And when it bursts open, that release of the parasites into the blood cell is going to cause the rise in the temperature of the body of the person. And this individual now is going to receive a fever or the symptoms of malaria. If the mosquitoes could be prevented from biting humans, then the disease would die out. Suppose we now have no individual here. For example, if we say that we can prevent this mosquito from biting the person and we protect this person so that the mosquito cannot reach this person and this person is protected, then the parasites will stay only in the mosquito. Then they will not survive because they need this life cycle of an individual. But because the individual now is prevented from the bitings of the mosquito, then the parasite cannot survive. Then that parasite will die out. But there is no way we can prevent them to reach human beings. An attempt to eradicate the malaria was made in 1950s by spraying insecticides such as DDT on the walls of the dwellings. So they were trying to eradicate the malarial parasite in the 1950s by using spraying insecticide on the walls of where people stay, by spraying DDT, but still it failed. What happened? The eradication program failed largely because the mosquitoes became resistant to the insecticide. So these mosquitoes, they first, of course, were affected by the DDT insecticides spraying, but with time, they became resistant to the insecticide. So the program of eradicating the parasite failed because of resistance. Now, other strategies involve draining of the swamps and turning sluggish river into swift streams. So we can try to eradicate malarial parasites by draining away the swamps, remove that stagnant water in the swamps. Then the sluggish rivers, we can make them to be swift streams, moving water very fast. That one can try to reduce on the large infestation of malarial parasites. The mosquitoes, they lay their eggs in static water which is not moving. And then the larvae will hatch and grow there. Now, if you look at the mosquito here, this mosquito is going to lay its eggs, and these eggs are laid in water, and in the water it's where the larvae is going to survive and the pupa will grow. That is the water which is static, water which is not moving. But if we can eradicate this static water, then we can be able to eradicate the malarial parasite. But still, the measures to reduce the population of the mosquitoes, there are some measures which we can also use to reduce on the population of the mosquitoes. We have said we can make sure we remove all the stagnant water that is in the swamp, and then the rivers which are flowing sluggishly, which can make them to move very fast. The water which collects in pots, tin cans, discarded tires, open tanks is the breeding ground for the mosquito. All that water in the pots, tin cans, tire, open tanks, ponds, and so on, it becomes a breeding ground for this mosquito because it is stagnant. And that's where they lay their eggs, and then the eggs are going to hatch into the larvae, then the larvae will develop into the pupa, which is going to develop into an adult mosquito. One of the most effective way of preventing infection with Plasmodium is to sleep under a mosquito net which is impregnated with insecticide. So we would advise people not to sleep in open space. They should sleep in mosquito nets, under mosquito nets, and those mosquito nets should be treated by or with insecticides. Hello, thank you very much for participating in Malaria. Please do like, share, and subscribe.